Now, on the USOIL spot, we've had a very indecisive situation since the beginning of the week. In fact, it ended up in a couple of losses for me, as we had my sell position went into a loss. Likewise, my buy position also went into a loss, as we saw how price action has been caught within a range in the last 24 hours. So I would like us to quickly run through what the week started with for us and how we got into the situation we are finding ourselves now. And one more thing I would like to say here for those who had a loss on this one, there's no cause for alarm. The week is still very early, it's still very young, and there is still a chance for us to capture and recoup whatever loss we have made so far. So let's stay tuned in and let's try and figure out what our next line of action will be. So the first thing that happened here yesterday during our live session was the fact that we acknowledged that price action was initially caught within a range between the $73.60 level and of course the $73.20 area to give us a flat channel to work with. Though we saw this old chopper situation happen, we saw the breakdown, we saw the breakout giving us leading to a stop loss there. But one thing you will notice here is that we had from this small range here, price action expanded into a wider range, which you can see between the $74 mark and of course the $73 area to further emphasize how strong the indecision is in this particular market. And this is very well connected to the expectation of the CPI data for tomorrow. As you all know how important the CPI data is as regards to the interest rate decision coming up in about 2 weeks from now. And this is likely going to be one of the reasons why the market is still being indecisive at this point in time. So while trying to identify a potential trading opportunity today, I was able to identify a trend line which I think we are going to be using to guide our trading activity for today. And one thing I did here before the trend line is this. I've noticed that despite the inability of buyers to break through the $74 level, we have seen how the area around that $73 area has been serving as a strong buying niche in this market. You will see how sellers have struggled around this point. The first time price got into this level, we saw a sharp rejection of that structure. We saw the same thing happen during the early hours of the New York session, and during the later part of the New York session, we saw another sharp rejection here, giving us a clue of how that level has a strong memory for buying power. So what the first thing I did here was to acknowledge that level. So I had a temporary demand zone identified there. So as long as price remains above the zone, we shall continue to look out for buying opportunity in this market. Now, in addition to that trend line is this, in addition to the demand zone there, is this trend line I was able to spot after connecting the series of higher lows. In fact, I will have to readjust this to capture the weeks of this ascending of this pivot lows you can see here. So what this simply means for us today is that we are going to remain bullish as long as price action remains above this trend line that we've just identified at this point in time. And in as much as things are looking very bearish, that is, we saw how buyers have been struggling as soon as price got into that area. We saw the same thing happen a couple of hours around this area. I'm of the opinion that we still need some level of patience before even jumping into any bullish move here. So we will need a confirmation to happen before we can open a buy position based on this current structure. Now, if we bring out our line chart and connect the series of lower highs here, we're going to be having another level we are going to be using to guide trading activities for today. So if we extend this out a little bit and then we see, so now what we are going to be doing here is to first of all wait for price action to break out of this trend line. First of all, very, very important. And remember that we are not getting too excited, so we are not having a buy stop order there yet, as we want to wait for confirmations to happen. And to know if a confirmation has happened, we want to scale down into our lower time frame. So it could be your 10 minutes, 5 minutes, or even your 15 minutes time frame to look out for retest of structure, signs that sellers are finding it difficult to break down that ascending trend line to give us an opportunity to join a bullish move to the upside. And in fact, if we start seeing that retest of structure or buying pressure around that above that descending trend line, we can join a buy position, then have a buy stop order above the $73.60 level, as you can see here, then hope to add more position at the breakout of the $74 area, which will have taken out all the sell position within the zone to further emphasize the strength of the buyers if we do have a breakout of that level. So this is how we are going to be buying the US oil spot for today. So let's keep this in mind. Mark this trend lines out on your chart, mark these levels out on your chart, and let's see how price action will play out in the next couple of hours. However, in as much as we're looking out for buying opportunity in this market, we cannot ignore the potentials of sellers. And you of course know how we do it in this community. As soon as price action, as soon as we identify a buyers, we also want to take into consideration the potentials that the sellers do have. Now, with the kind of situation we have here, what are we going to be seeing on this chart that will make us to sell? And one thing I also want to let us know before I talk about the bearish expectation here is that key level for the week we have at the $72.50 area. Now, price action remains above our key level, and you know when price remains above our key level, we want to be looking out for patterns and structures that will support the idea of buying. But in this case scenario where the potential of sellers are looking promising, we want to see significant patterns before joining any bearish move. Now we have an ascending trend line which we identified earlier after connecting the series of high and lows. So we want to see a breach of this trend line to give us a signal of where price action of selling opportunity in this market. Now, if price breaks down the trend line, doesn't mean that we want to be joining a sell momentum just right away. Remember, we identified a demand zone here, which has been a very strong buying niche since the beginning of this week. So for us to sell around this juncture, we need a significant confirmation. So once the breakdown of the ascending trend line happens, we want to be scaling down into our lower time frame, where we shall be looking out for a retest of structure, where continued selling pressure below this level will be what we are looking for to be part of a bearish move. And if price action continues to drop to the downside, a breakdown retest of the $72.50 level will welcome more opportunity to sell the US oil spot for today. So you can see how these trend lines are going to be serving as a major determinant of price action for today. So you want to be marking out this ascending trend line, and of course this descending trend line here has a breakout or breakdown of these trend lines will be a signal of what to look to, a signal that price action is going in that particular direction. And remember, we said here that we shall be waiting for confirmations before joining any potential move at this point. So a breakout of structure, scale down to your lower time frame, retest of structure followed by buying pressure around that area, then we want to be joining any momentum from that level to the upside or to the downside, depending on where the breakout happens. So these are my views here on the US oil spot for today. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comment section.